Good day, everyone. We are Chapter 8, Lesson 1 presenters, and our topic was all about our philosophical heritage, or specifically philosophies of education. By the way, my name is Dinehart Iporizo, together with my group mates in this report, Miss Princess May Asilan and Miss Riana Arteaga. So before we start discussing each of our topics, I'd like to ask if perhaps you have any idea on education philosophy. What does it mean and what is it all about? You can leave your answers on the comment box below if you have any. Okay, so what does a philosophy of education or education philosophy mean? It is a set of statements or a statement that identifies and clarifies the beliefs, values, and understandings of an individual or group with respect to education. Defined in this sense, it may be thought of as a more or less organized body of knowledge and opinion on education, both as it is conceptualized and it is practiced. A philosophy of this sort is critical in defining and directing the purposes, objectives, and focus of a school. It should also serve to inspire and direct educational planning, programs, and processes in any given setting. A philosophy of education may influence what subjects or topics are taught, how they are taught, and perhaps more importantly, the supporting beliefs and values that are taught, both implicitly and explicitly within and around the core. Let's go back. Lesson 1 is focused on at least 7 philosophies of education, and each philosophy has its own answer to questions like what is the nature of the learner, how does he or she learn, and what should I teach to him and her. As you all know, we have a very rich philosophical heritage, but only 7 philosophies were discussed here, namely the constructivism, essentialism, progressivism, perennialism, existentialism, behaviorism, and lastly is linguistic philosophy. The 7 philosophies differ in their concepts of the learner and the values in why do we teach, objectives, what should be taught, curriculum, and how should the curriculum be taught, teaching strategies. However, there exist also some similarities among the philosophies, and we will going to find out what are those.
Constructivism. What is constructivism? So for example, Malik is a history teacher. He wants to teach his students about the Dust Bowl and isn't quite sure about the best way to approach it. He's heard that constructivist teaching can help him, but he's not sure what it is or how he can use it in his classroom. Constructivism allows students to construct their own learning. Constructivist teaching is about making good learners as opposed to simply giving student information. In a constructivist classroom, Malik will want to have his students explore concept in an organic way. His focus will be on teaching students how to learn, instead of just giving them facts about history. So, why to teach in constructivism? So, to develop intrinsically motivated and independent learners adequate equipped with learning skills for them to be able to construct knowledge and making meaning of them. So, what to teach? So, learners are taught how to learn, learning process and skills. How to teach? So, teachers are provide students with data or experience that allow them to hypothesize, predict, manipulate objects, pose questions, research, investigate, and invent. So, there are 5 major principles of constructivism. First, teachers seek and value students' point of view. Unlike the traditional teaching, students are expected to provide the one right answer the teacher is looking for. In constructivist classroom, students are encouraged to elaborate on their ideas and use evidence to bolster their opinions. Through supportive questionings, teachers can get students to communicate what they're thinking and why. Second, classroom activities challenge students' assumptions. Third, teacher pose problem of relevance. Fourth, Teacher build lessons around big ideas. Fifth, teacher assessment learning in context of daily teaching. Essentialism. Essentialism is the educational philosophy of teaching basic skills. This philosophy advocates training the mind. Essentialist educators focus on transmitting a series of progressively difficult topics and promotions of students to the next level or grade. Subjects are focused on the historical context of the material world and culture, and move sequentially to give a solid understanding of the present day. This philosophy stresses core knowledge in reading, writing, math, science, history, foreign language, and technology. The tools include lecturing, memorization, repetition, practice, and assessment. Essentialists believe that teachers should try to embed traditional moral values and virtues such as respect for authority, perseverance, fidelity to duty, considerations for others, and practically and intellectual knowledge that students need to become model citizens. Why teach? To help students understand and appreciate themselves as unique individuals who accept complete responsibility for their thoughts, feelings, and actions. Help students define their own essence by exposing them to various paths. Education of the person. What to teach? Students are given a wide variety of options from which they to choose. Tremendous emphasis is given to humanities to provide students with vicarious experience that will help unleash their own creativity and self-expression. Vocational education is regarded more, encourage creativity and imaginations. How to teach? Focus on individual. Learning is self-paced, self-directed. Great deal of individual contact with the teacher. Employ values clarification strategy. Example of essentialism would be lecture-based introduction classes taught at universities. Students sit and take notes in a classroom which holds over 100 students. They take introductory level courses in order to introduce them to the content.
Progressivism. Progressivists believe that education should focus on the whole child rather than on the content or the teacher. This educational philosophy stresses that students should test ideas by active experimentation. Learning is rooted in the questions of learners that arise through experiencing the world. It is active and not passive. The learner is a problem solver and thinker who makes meaning through his or her individual experience in the physical and cultural context. Effective teachers provide experiences so that students can learn by doing. Curriculum's content is derived from students' interests and questions. The scientific method is used by progressivist educators so that students can study matter and events systematically and firsthand. The emphasis is on process, on how one comes to know. The progressive education philosophy was established in America from the mid-1920s through the mid-1950s, and John Dewey was its foremost proponent. Why teach progressivism? To develop learners into becoming enlightened and intelligent citizens of a democratic society, and to teach learners so they may live life fully now. What to teach in progressivism? Progressivism teaches the need-based and relevant curriculum. Curriculum that responds to students' needs and relates to students' lives and experiences. Accept the impermanence of life and the inevitability of change. Concerned with teaching the learner skill to cope with change. Give focus to teaching of skills or process in gathering and evaluating information and in problem solving. How to teach progressivism? Employ such as experiential methods and learns by doing. John Dewey is the advocate of progressivism. Heavily rely on the problem-solving method such as scientific method. Hands-on mind on teaching method like field trips and thought-provoking games. Perennialism. For perennialists, The aim of education is to ensure that students acquire understanding about the great ideas of Western civilization. These ideas have the potential for solving problems in any era. The focus is to teach ideas that are everlasting, to seek enduring truths which are constant, not changing, as the natural and human worlds at their most essential level will do not change. Teaching these unchanging principles is critical. Humans are rational beings and their mind needs to be developed. Thus, cultivation of the intellect is the highest priority in a worthwhile education. The demanding curriculum focuses on attaining cultural literacy, stressing students' growth in enduring disciplines. The loftiest accomplishment of humankind are emphasized the great works of literature and art. Advocates of this educational philosophy are Robert Maynard Hutchins, who developed a great book program in 1963, and Mortimer Adler, who further developed this curriculum based on 100 great books of Western civilization. Why teach perennialism? We are all rational animals, and it helps develop the students' rational and moral powers. What to teach in perennialism? Curriculum is universal or general, heavy on the humanities or general education, less emphasis on vocational and technical education, and what the perennialist teachers teach are lifted from the great books. How to teach perennialism? It's centered around teachers, and students engage in Socratic dialogues or mutual inquiry sessions to develop an understanding of history's most timeless concepts.
Existentialism. What does it mean? Existentialism is a philosophical doctrine which emphasizes the freedom of human beings to make choices in a world where there are no absolutes outside of man himself. A doctrine primarily attributed to Soren Kierkegaard, a 19th century Danish philosopher, emphasizes the freedom of human beings to make the choices in a world where there are no absolute values outside the individuals. Other existentialists include Jean-Paul Sartre, Albert Camus, Karl Jasper, Martin Heidegger, and Gabriel Marcel. The existentialists have no concrete concept to support the existence of God or any absolute value. They believe that man is the molder of his own destiny. For them, truth is never absolute, but it is always relative to each individual who is the sole determiner of the truth for himself, and every value is always dependent upon the free choice of every man. The main concept of the existentialist is to help students understand and appreciate themselves as unique individuals who accept complete responsibility for their thoughts, feelings, and actions, since existence precedes essence. Sartre argues that existence precedes essence. If existence precedes essence, man himself will create his essence and thus will be responsible for his actions. In this way of thinking, there is no necessity for the existence of God. The existentialist teacher's role is to help students define their own essence by exposing them to various paths they take in life and by creating an environment in which they freely choose their own preferred way. Since feeling is not divorced from reason in decision making, the existentialist demands the education of the whole person, not just in mind. Education to the existentialist should enable a person to make choices for his or her life. Existentialism as an educational philosophy. Existentialism sprang from a strong rejection of the traditional, essentialist approach to education. Existentialism rejects the existence of any source of objective, authoritative truth about metaphysics, epistemology, and ethics. Instead, individuals are responsible for determining for themselves what is true or false, right or wrong, beautiful or ugly. For the existentialist, there exists no universal form of human nature. Each of us has the free will to develop as we see fit. In an existentialist curriculum, students are given a wide variety of options from which to choose. Students are afforded great latitude in their choice of subject matter. Existentialists believe that the classroom should be a market of free ideas that would guarantee complete individual freedom. The student must be allowed to decide for himself and undertake activities which he believes are significant and beneficial in his life. The staff, rather than the students, influence the curriculum. The humanities are commonly given tremendous emphasis. They are explored as a means of providing students with vicarious experiences that will help unleash their own creativity and self-expression. For instance, rather than emphasizing historical events, existentialists focus upon the actions of historical individuals, each of whom provides possible models for the student's own behavior. In contrast to the humanities, math and the natural sciences may be de-emphasized, presumably because their subject matter would be considered cold, dry, objective, and therefore less fruitful to self-awareness. Vocational education is regarded more as a means of teaching students about themselves and their potential than of earning a livelihood. In teaching art, existentialism encourages individual creativity and imagination more than copying and imitating established models. The teacher should only act as a guide, a resource person, or facilitator of learning and must not interfere in the decisions of the student. The teacher has the right to teach his students how to think but not what to think. The proponents of this philosophy believe that childhood is not adulthood. Childhood is playing, and no child ever gets enough play. When a child has played enough, he will start to work and face difficulties. This theory has been shown in the pupil's ability to do a good job when it involves a lot of unpleasant work. Existentialist methods focus on the individual. Learning is self-paced, self-directed, and includes a great deal of individual contact with the teacher, who relates to each student openly and honestly. Existentialists help students know themselves and their place in society. Teachers employ values clarification strategy. In the use of such strategy, teachers remain non-judgmental and take care not to impose their values in their students since values are personal. Each person is ought to be unique and therefore efforts to impose group values upon the individual are not acceptable. In order to cultivate and maintain the unique character of the individual, a high degree of personal freedom is required. Behaviorism. Okay, so what is behaviorism? It is an area of psychological study that focuses on observing and analyzing how controlled environmental changes affect behavior. The goal of behavioristic teaching methods is to manipulate the environment of a subject, a human or an animal, in an effort to change the subject's observable behavior. Behaviorist schools are concerned with the modification and shaping of students' behavior by providing for a favorable environment. Since they believe that they are a product of their environment, they are after students who exhibit desirable behavior in society. One immediate benefit of behavior modification plans is the shift away from solely punishing unwanted behavior to also reward good behavior. Note that punishment and reinforcement have nothing to do with good or bad behavior, only if it increases or decreases the likelihood of the behavior to occur. Examples of behavior modification which can be used to increase behavior are praise and approval, modeling, positive programming. In curriculum, behaviorists look at people and other animals as a complex combinations of matter that act only in response to internally or externally generated physical stimuli. Behaviorist teachers teach students to respond favorably to various stimuli in the environment. Behaviorism can also be thought of as a form of classroom management. Behaviorists believe human beings are shaped entirely by their external environment. Behaviorists believe that if teachers provide positive reinforcement or rewards whenever students perform a desired behavior, they will learn to perform the behavior on their own. An example of behaviorism is when teachers reward their class or certain students with a party or special treat at the end of the week for good behavior throughout the week. The same concept is used with punishments. The teacher can take away certain privileges if the student misbehaves. Behaviorist teachers ought to arrange environmental conditions so that students can make the responses to stimuli. Physical variables like light, temperature, arrangement of furniture, size and quantity of visual aids have to be controlled to get the desired responses from the learners. Teachers ought to make the stimuli clear and interesting to capture and hold the learner's attention. They ought to provide appropriate incentives to reinforce positive responses and weaken or eliminate negative ones.
Linguistic philosophy. Linguistic philosophy is the view that many or all philosophical problems can be solved or dissolved by paying closer attentions to language, either by reforming language or by better understanding our everyday language. Why teach? To develop the communication skills of the learners. To develop in the learning the skills to send message clearly and receive messages correctly.
What to teach in linguistic philosophy? Learners should be taught to communicate clearly, and communication takes place in three ways such as verbal, nonverbal, and paraverbal. What is verbal? Verbal is the content of our message, the choice and arrangement of our words. This can be oral or written. Nonverbal is the message we send through body language, and the paraverbal refers to how we say what we say, like the tone, pacing, and volume of our voices. Linguistic philosophy teaches learners to use language that is correct, precise, grammatical, coherent, and accurate. It helps students expand their vocabularies, teach the learner how to communicate clearly, caution the learners of the verbal and nonverbal barriers of communication, and lastly, to teach the learner to speak as many languages as you can.
In linguistic philosophy, the most effective way to teach language and communication is through the experiential way. Make them experience sending and receiving messages through verbal, nonverbal, and paraverbal manner. Teachers should make the classroom a place for the interplay of minds and hearts. The teacher facilitates dialogue among learners and between him or her and his or her students because in the exchange of words, there is also an exchange of ideas.